Unmute. I think your mic should be live now.
Yes,
Hello.
it is. I think it is. Can you hear me?
I sure can. I can hear you loud and clear. Perfect. Perfect. You've been having a busy day. You've been traveling today, I understand.
Yes, yes. Just made it in, so glad to be here.
Okay, good. Yeah, perfect timing. It's one of those TGIFs, I think.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All good. Welcome everyone. We'll get started. I want to welcome everyone to today's installment of mini podcast expert conversations on the future of energy. And our featured speaker today is Erin Ho. I'm your host and podcast producer, Paige Donner. And let me stop the screen share and then we can do some mini introductions um, before we get started. First, I just want to say a big thank you to the team at US Fusion Energy for, organizing this. It's the third year in a row they've done Fusion Energy Week. It's a complete labor of love. So hats off to Arturo, Oak, and Steffi, who are the force behind US Fusion Energy Week. Um, we will have a couple of minutes at the end for Q&A for Aaron. But we'll let him pretty much, take it away for the next 10 or 12 minutes. Just a quick overview, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more, more in depth. But Aaron is a research scientist, and he's working at the Plasma Science and Fusion Center inside of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So his research combines plasma transport knowledge with machine learning techniques to build fast surrogate models with the aim of using them to aid in the design and operation of tokamak devices. So you are, as we'll hear, I'm sure during your talk, or not talk during our conversation, you're kind of at the center of things right now, and most of our conversation will focus on the Genesis mission. Just a couple words about myself. Again, my name is Paige Donner. This is the second time I've been hosting these podcasts for Fusion Energy Week. And I've been communicating about fusion energy since 2021. I got a grant from the Filecoin Foundation in 2022 to host a series of expert conversations, which you can still find online. And the timing was quite fortuitous. I do not have engineering background whatsoever, but I do have a lot of strategic communications background, and I am the owner of IoT Logistics LLC, a small woman-owned small business. Erin, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's great to be here, Paige, and great to talk to this, podcast audience. I think that how I would describe myself right now is like right on the cusp of joining these two worlds of, how we do plasma fusion, plasma analysis, and machine learning. So I am from Canada. I went across the ocean to Europe to study my master's and doctorate degree in fusion physics. Learned a lot over there, including getting into this whole machine learning business when it was sort of taking off. And I remember it was very exciting when we were trying that for the first time. And we kind of knew it would work, but we didn't know if it would work at scale. Like, would it actually apply to any realistic scenarios in an experiment or something like that. And we managed to get like pretty good success, for first attempts for kind of semi bumbling around at it. And since then, because of that work, I was, able to come to MIT and continue my work here, and very excited to continue doing that through this Genesis mission, possibly. Yes.
Yeah, it's nice that you have this kind of pan North American and European perspective, I think that that's only going to serve you, better and better as the years go on. And there are some really big people in fusion energy who are from the Netherlands. So yeah, so I imagine that serves you well. Yeah, let's get into it. I know that in our kind of prep talk for this, we sort of designated you as, okay, you're going to be the guy who explains to us what what the Genesis mission is, and we're just looking for like a broad overview, kind of like what does the executive order say, and why is it tasking the Department of Energy Federal Labs, with this mission? So tell us more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can tell you sort of my interpretation of the executive order, because it's kind of publicly available for those who want to read it, and it's not so lengthy, but very wordy way. But I can kind of see that this is a very interesting time where there's a lot of build up for AI infrastructure around the world, especially in the US, trying to, get all these hardware in one place and data centers and then connect people with them in order to leverage, developments within our AI and machine learning to see what we can do with it. And I think one of the ideas of the executive order is trying to see, let's connect our scientific world, right? All the scientific capabilities in the US with such machine learning or high compute capabilities and see if that helps to accelerate progress, bring about new innovations, start thinking about things in different ways, maybe, since we're all kind of aware that using AI in the way, we call them hallucinations, but they're really a way of like doing creative exploration, things that maybe don't come to mind if you're really, really focused on your one task or your one line of research. So a way to see if we can use these tools to accelerate how we do things, or at least figure out, are there ever other avenues that we haven't explored yet, or can we just do things better or faster, right? That's another outcome that would probably be okay as well, even if it is not nothing that a human hasn't already thought of. Um, and so
Yeah,
that's sort of my interpretation of the Genesis mission, is just trying to encourage through the use of this executive order, this kind of interaction between the scientific community and this upcoming AI industry.
yeah, and sorry for interrupting there. Yeah, no, I appreciate that broad overview, and I appreciate your interpretation too. That's an interesting way of kind of putting a framework around what we've come to know as hallucinations. Calling it exploratory research, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting. In another conversation, not in this one, but I would love to explore further about, what kind of capacity building is this, imposing or opening up for researchers, at the federal labs, right? Because I guess the Genesis mission specifically is mandated for the 17 Department of Energy labs, federal labs, correct? Anyway, maybe a topic for another conversation. But I did want to ask you, a little bit, like, again, in our preparatory conversation, we kind of came across, a point of like, how can we draw potential parallels with DeepMind and AlphaFold? Like if fusion energy is kind of sort of the new kid on the block in terms of AI augmented research, right? How can the collaborative frameworks like data and otherwise, how can that relate to other fields of study, like, material science, and how can that support your fusion energy research? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're working directly with like the core team at MIT, right? Like Christina Rea and them. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So I think that's another component of the Genesis mission that they have in there, is by trying to not necessarily standardize, but at least bring all of these different fields under the DOE umbrella into one kind of room to talk to each other. We can try to figure out if there are lessons learned from other, fields of research that they have techniques or models or ways of looking at the problem that can be transferred to how we do our science in fusion, and perhaps that there is some crossover that we can take advantage of. And exactly as you mentioned, there are sort of these foundational models, or big successful models on such as AlphaFold in like protein folding and stuff like that, which have really not, I wouldn't say necessarily revolutionized is a big word, but it's definitely had a huge impact on that field. And we would be curious to know, like, well, how did they do it? What was required? How much data did they need? Did they need a lot of pre-processing? Um, was it a matter of a lot of trial and error? Did they have experiments hooked up to, what the machine learning model returns, or infrastructure of experiments, so that they could always get not necessarily live feedback, but some kind of rapid feedback on what the machine learning algorithm said? Oh, try this one next, right? Like, what was involved in that? And is it something we can replicate in Fusion? Do we have the capacity for it? Do we have to start building out more infrastructure in order to achieve the same level of success there? So there's, I think, a lot of questions that we can learn, that we can ask and potentially learn from the other fields who have been around, let's say, a bit longer in terms of like world research, but also maybe a bit longer in terms of integrating with these AI tools as well. And so I think that that would be very valuable from the Fusion community to try and leverage those connections. And I think that that is one of the strengths of putting all of this in under one umbrella. And hopefully we will get there. And, it may turn out to be a very ambitious way to look at things, as it'll take some time, but this is a good first step, right? Bringing everyone into one room.
Yeah. Oh, I like how you said that. Yeah, bringing everyone into one room. That's a big first step, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People have been
And
so.
I think it would be very nice, right? So we, of course, in Fusion have a lot of plasma models that we, from a physicist point of view, have spent a lot of effort building and reducing and doing experiments to figure out, teasing out what is like the exact equations behind the phenomena that we're seeing in our experiments. And we have now these big modeling frameworks, but they're not yet coupled to something like AI, like building a big database or having some kind of rapid method of running a model and then comparing it to an experiment, right? And there's a lot of maybe infrastructural work to be done there to connect the two. And I think that through this Genesis project, or mission, if we could do that and kind of get the resources and get the human power to do that, that would be amazing. To try that out and see what value that brings to the community. Will it start proposing, you know, plasmas, or scenarios in plasmas that we have not considered before? Or will it tell us, oh, we're on the right track. We've kind of picked the right path to do it, and now we just have to do more of it, right? And that would be very cool to figure out if that's the outcome or not.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I was kind of gonna ask, what are you excited about? But it sounds like you kind of just sort of answered that question a bit. You're kind of excited about seeing what have we not thought of yet.
Yeah, exactly. And even to get to that level of you leveraging the AI infrastructure for answering that question may take a fair amount more of infrastructure build out to answer. But even on the low scale of having these machine learning tools help with data analysis. We have databases of data. It's maybe not what we've considered large or big data from, like image processing world, but it's a fair amount. And maybe there's information already locked in that if we just do simple, more on the lower scale data analysis with the machine learning models can already be interesting. So not necessarily building out this massive computational platform, but even so we can start small and work our way up. And it's why it would be valuable to connect with other fields that have done this already and see did they only see the benefit when they went, with the full Monty with everything, or were there small things that they gained along the way that makes it worthwhile to do it in a stepped approach, right? These kinds of questions, it would be very nice to explore.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that you're sharing sort of the inner workings of your reflections on this because you don't often get to get inside of a plasma scientist's brain and see what they're thinking about. So yeah.
Fair, yeah, no. I think that there's a lot of like small details on how we would try to leverage AI in our field, and I won't go through all the technical stuff here. It's not the point, but uh, the processes of how we apply it, I think that is something that we would like to discuss within ourselves as well, right? And there are many researchers around the world who are already using it in sort of these small scale approaches, seeing success and reporting back, oh, like, have you tried that? Also doing like infrastructure rewrite, so using things like Claude or other code helpers, agents to kind of accelerate how we do the development of physics models, and that way we can free up bandwidth for people to think about the physics rather than like, oh, how did I put the semicolon in the right place?
Yeah,
So things
yeah.
like this, right? Yeah. It's very, very valuable to see how people are using these tools and then trying to make a bigger application, like a larger scale application out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, I'd like to open up the floor now to any of our guests who may want to either raise their hand or you can unmute. I think you should be able to unmute yourself, and if you can't, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Maybe any questions for Aaron? We're keeping these to about 20 minutes. But if you have a couple extra minutes since we did start like a couple minutes after the hour. And
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to take questions.
All right, we'll give people a second to raise their hand, or I think sometimes I think for many people who are not in fusion research or are not like fans like myself of fusion energy, it can be, I think, it's an intimidating topic, you know. um so I could see how people would be interested to hear but wouldn't quite know, or wouldn't quite maybe necessarily want to raise their hand in public to ask questions. And and that's why we're doing this podcast. Actually, this might be a good opportunity. I think you mentioned to me that you a couple years ago you were hosting a podcast. What was the mission behind that?
Yeah, so I had a small podcast that's available on YouTube and Spotify. It's called Coffee Breakdown for anyone interested. And the objective of that podcast was really to bring on people who were researching infusion, either, experienced researchers and scientists, or, students that are starting to break into the field and have something interesting to discuss, and really is to provide a platform for them to discuss and share their opinions of the results that they found or of the field itself, to a more broad audience, but still technically driven. So we were still trying to talk about the science, talk about the technology and the physics and all of the components, but in maybe a more broadly reachable manner than someone who is very deep into that field, right? So that way we can reach other engineers or scientists or other students who are starting their career in STEM, to kind of like latch on to some technical concepts and be able to figure out, oh, like that sounds cool. Like I might want to start looking at that, right, myself. So that was the point of that podcast.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I would imagine that being a full-time research scientist and PhD and then doing a podcast, that's a lot to juggle. So, what's nice is that you have those archives and people can refer back to them. And now it's kind of like a slice of history as to the evolution of the industry of the.
Absolutely. And that's that's an interesting point that you bring up, actually. And I haven't really thought about that, is that it would be nice to go back, if I'm planning to continue doing the podcast, moving forward, but it would be nice to go back and revisit episodes and be like, oh, did we actually solve that problem? Right? This is something someone was talking about that said, oh, this is a concern. And then maybe 5 years from now, it's not a concern anymore. We have the solution. So it's a nice historical record as well, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Cool. All right. Love it. Well, I guess let's wrap here so that we can keep in our framework of mini podcasts and expert conversations. But I want to thank you so much, Aaron, for juggling your very busy schedule to join us today and to support this, and to give shed a little bit more light for the rest of us about what this Genesis mission is. And of course, to support Fusion Energy Week. And thank you all to our guests too for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure to chat.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, talk to you again soon then.
Yep. Bye.